Welcome back to Her Birth, Her Story, where we share real birth experiences. I'm Brick, your host, and I'm just telling you, you guys need to buckle up because we are about to jump into 3 very fast and furious labors. And there's a lot of times that everyone has this fear where if they're going from their house to the hospital, everybody's always worried about giving birth in the car. Well, guess what? I am chatting with Shelby today, who actually experienced a car birth. So we jump into her 3 different stories. So please join me and let's hold space for Shelby and her stories. Hey Shelby, thank you so much for coming on Her Birth, Her Story. Can you go ahead and just start by introducing yourself for us?
Hey, yeah, thank you so much for having me on. My name is Shelby. I am married to my husband of 12 years. We have 3 kids and 1 on the way. Baby is due in July. We have 2 dogs. We live out in the country, which is exactly where we want to be. We
Yep.
prefer to be very secluded.
Mhm.
We do have neighbors, but they are quite a walk away, so not surrounded by anybody.
I'm really excited to jump into your birth stories because you've had 3 very unique births. And, obviously you're planning on your 4th now. Can you just give us like a quick overview of each of your births?
Yeah. So my first was a preterm labor at 34 weeks. Got to the hospital. I'll go into my birth story in a minute. So she was preterm hospital birth. My second was a planned hospital birth because we did not know why she came early. So we were kind of nervous and I ended up having him in the car. And then for my third, we were like, okay, I can carry to term. So let's just have a home birth. And that is what we did. And then we plan to do that with the 4th as well.
And before your first, what was kind of like your mentality or your view of pregnancy and birth and just your expectations going into your first?
This is such a funny question for a podcast, a birth podcast. I was not into it. Growing up, birth disturbed me. I didn't want to do it, which is so funny now. And I was that way until I was into my 20s. It wasn't until probably my sister got pregnant and had her first and also when you get more into the holistic side of life, your mindset changes too. So I had started switching like to non-toxic living in 2017. So that was a little bit of my mindset as well. So when I got pregnant, I did intend to have an unmedicated birth. Like that's what I wanted to do. I'm very type B, go with the flow. So I've held that very loosely though. And I wasn't so deep into my holistic state of mind that I was like, I'm going to be induced at 39 weeks. Like that was my plan because my mommy and my sister both go over historically. So I was like, that's going to be me.
Yeah.
And I don't want to do that. Yeah. So that was my mindset about birth kind of going in. I had kind of eased up on the idea of giving birth, obviously, and I didn't want an epidural for a lot of different reasons. So I kind of had to get over myself and be like, women do this every single day.
Yeah. No, that's really good. So now I just want to go ahead and let you tell your first birth story uninterrupted.
Okay. Well, let's get into it because it's a little bit wild. It felt wild to me, like at the time and
Yep.
after. So I was 34 weeks and 3 days, and it was 2 a.m. My husband was just getting into bed, and I was awake. I don't know if he woke me up or if I was already awake, but as soon as he got into bed, I felt something wet. And I was like, I either just peed myself or my water broke. And my husband was like, you're lying. And I'm like, no. So I go to the bathroom and more kept coming out. And I was like, okay, that's my water. Started freaking out a little bit because I was 34 weeks and really wasn't expecting this. Like I said before, I was really expecting to be induced because I was expecting to go over. So I never, like in my mind, never prepared for an earlier labor. Had nothing packed. Of course, usually by 34 weeks, I don't anyways, just because of the type of person I am. But either way, we threw some stuff in a bag. I called my mom and my sister and told them we did call the hospital first and tell them what was going on. And I just remember on the phone, I don't know if I was a little bit in denial or I just honestly didn't know. But on the phone, I said, if my water really did break, am I having a baby tonight? And she, on the phone, she was very nice. She was like, if your water broke, you will be holding your baby sometime soon. And I was like, okay. So then I get off the phone, I'm like crying to my husband, and he's very calm. He's very good in situations that I am not good in.
Yeah.
So we get in the car. Contractions start while I'm in the car, and they're manageable. I'm breathing through them a little bit, but not crazy. We get to the hospital. Check-in was pretty quick. They really weren't busy. They got me into a room, and I, having contractions, and then they checked me because, they check you when you go into the hospital. And I was at a 2, which like I really honestly did not know what that meant at the time. I was like, I'm expecting to have a 20 to 30 hour labor. Because again, like both my mom and my sister had long labors, and that's just what I was expecting. And then most first time moms have longer labors typically. So I had mentally prepared my whole pregnancy that I was going to go over and it was going to be long. So I didn't think much about being at a 2. So I'm laboring. I remember telling my husband, like at the time, because I was right before active labor, I would say. And told him, what's funny is I've had period cramps worse than this, but like it is funny to look at because like early labor is kind of like that. And you do not know what you're about to go into. I didn't. Now, I had watched my sister give birth, and she was induced and tried to go unmedicated and went unmedicated for 24 hours, and it was crazy. But so I start going into active labor. My mom and my sister show up. So my mom came so she could keep my sister's baby, who she just had 7 months earlier. So my sister could be in the room with me. Because something you are going to see through this podcast is my sister is like my acting doula. At the time, she was not a doula. However, she has since become one, but she is a very strong voice and presence in my labors and deliveries. So she's going to be brought up quite a bit. So my sister gets there. I'm like having a contraction on the floor, and then I go to the bathroom. And if you have been in labor before, you have your labor spots that you gravitate towards. Mine is the toilet.
Same.
I feel like that's just a favorable spot for a lot of women.
Yeah.
Some women hate it and then some people love it, and that's just naturally where I go. So I was on the toilet a lot. And they let me walk around and stuff, which was really nice because also I was like at a 2 when I first got there. So I don't know if they were really expecting me to go as fast as I did. So it started getting intense. And I looked up at my husband and I said, I can't do this another 15 hours because I was in the middle of active labor and fully expecting that just to be hours on end. And I said, I can't do this. I want the epidural. And he's like, okay. So he goes out and he tells one of the nurses, hey, she wants the epidural. And my nurse was like, okay, well, we'll send for it. Let's check her. Because I think my nurse knew like how deep into it I was. Come to find out, she was actually very natural minded. And she, like, sometime after I had given birth, she ended up moving and becoming a nurse at like a birth center. And she had previously had home births and things like that. So she was very knowledgeable about birth and not just like medicalized birth. So I think her seeing where I was, like how I was acting, she could see how deep I was into it. So she was like, let's just check you. So they got me on the bed, and my sister says I handled it well. I feel like I was losing it a little bit because then I had started going into transition. And she checked me and she was like, "You're in an 8." And I was like, "Okay." And she said, "You can do this." And then my sister was beside me and she was like, "Holy crap, like you are so close." And I was like, "Okay, I can do it. Let's go." So not long after that is when I pushed her out. It was like I was at an 8 and then I probably like 20 minutes later, if that, she was out. And she was 34 weeks. So when she came out, they just like kind of sat her on me for a second
Mhm.
and then like took her away. And that was the last time that I saw her for 4 hours. And I'll get into that. But as far as like what happened after, so they took her to the NICU and the OB that was there was not my OB.
Mm.
He was out of town or something. And obviously I had went early, so
Yeah.
that I don't think they even called him. Whoever the doctor was who was delivering her was very impatient. Like you could tell she was very aggravated that I had gone unmedicated, just very rude and uncomfortable. And she ended up manually taking my placenta out, which in a hospital is feel like they don't do it as much now, but it is typical for them to get it out because they either are ready to leave or they truly think in their mind that they are preventing you from hemorrhaging. She was pulling it out in pieces. I was very uncomfortable. It was way worse than like in the labor and delivery I just went through, like way worse.
Ugh.
And even my husband and my sister like still remember it and it was horrific. They said it was horrific to watch.
Mm.
And she was very aggravated and just kept telling me like you have to be still, like you have to stop. Um
Wow.
cuz I was like flinching cuz it was a lot. So she did finally get it out. And the repercussion of that was, and I honestly didn't even know how long you bled postpartum
Mhm.
at that time. And I bled for 12 weeks postpartum,
Wow.
um, which now looking back is not normal. And when I went to my 6-week appointment, my doctor was like, "Well, you may have just started your period." And I was like, "Maybe, I don't know." And then, because I was breastfeeding because she was in the NICU and I was like a first time mom and I also didn't know a whole lot.
Yeah.
I was pumping, but it was like very bare minimum and not like what she was needing,
Mhm.
especially after we got home. So it would have been not unlikely that I would start.
Yeah.
But I don't, like I said, I don't think that was the case just because it was like a straight 12 weeks
Mhm.
after I had given birth. So that was pretty much the whole birth story. The birth was very fast. It was 4.5 hours from start to finish, from my water breaking to delivering her.
Wow. That's very
Yeah.
fast. Especially for a
Yes.
first and for one coming early and stuff too. Like that's very fast.
Yes. And that not what I was expecting at all.
Yeah,
For
no.
sure.
And especially if you don't like really feel that can be a lot too, because not only is it a little bit traumatic, obviously going early, and then just the anxiety of like a NICU baby and making sure that your baby's okay, and then you going through the whole impatient OB trying to, well, not trying to, basically manually taking your placenta out in pieces. All of that is very traumatic, and then add a fast birth onto that too. It can be a lot to like process. So what was it like having an early fast hospital birth?
As far as labor and delivery, I thought it was great. Like I I I think fondly of my first labor and delivery experience. The labor and birth itself was not traumatic. I think that it was very unexpected, but it was also my first, so I didn't really know what to expect anyways. So it didn't make me feel any differently about what I felt before, other than I felt more positive about birth and that it was something that I was capable of doing, and it didn't freak me out as much.
Yeah, and you had mentioned having great nurses and just like how your sister's a big support for you, but you had a very insensitive doctor. So how did that kind of change the dynamics of your like labor space?
I didn't even notice when she walked into the room. Like when I was in labor and she delivered, I did not really recognize it. I know that my husband and my sister both had a very strong opinion about how she was acting, like while I was giving birth. And I guess it's because I was being loud. I'm really not sure. And because also, like, previously, they were telling me to not push, like, before she walked in. And I don't know who this man was, if he was a nurse or a doc. I don't really know who he was, but when they were telling me to not push, he was like, "Well, you can't really tell a natural mama not to push. So she's okay," which
Ooh.
was very, very nice. So, like, in the moment, I didn't think much about it. And then even after when she was manually pulling out the placenta, I didn't think that much about it. I knew that I was uncomfortable. At the time, I was not aware of like standing up for yourself and knowing your rights. And I really didn't know much about the placenta. And if you notice anything about my birth stories, I do learn more and more each time. But with my first, I did not know that much. I just knew very basics and didn't really look into much else. So, as far as delivering the placenta, I knew that you had to deliver it, and that was the extent of my knowledge. And I didn't really think about cord clamping, anything like that. But I also was not thinking about that at the time because they cut the cord right away and took her. So it was all very fast and I didn't think about it until afterwards. And I feel like a lot of women have this experience where in the moment when something is happening to you, you don't know how absurd it is. Like in hindsight, knowing what I know now, I'm like appalled at how I was treated. And not just because it was personally me, it was because I know that women are treated like that every day by providers who are supposed to be caring for them like they're humans and not just patients. And that I think it still gets under my skin, not just because like it happened to me, but knowing that she did that to more than one person.
Yeah. And I think that, I mean, that's another reason why I wanted to start this podcast, anyways, is just so that people can hear from other moms' stories, but also just you really trust that when you go, especially for your first, when you go to your OB or your midwife, you expect them to like give you the knowledge, like all the things to expect, what's going to happen. And a lot of times that is really never the case, especially in the hospital. And I can speak from my own personal experience with my first, but like it is on you to educate yourself and have that knowledge. And a lot of times they take advantage of first time moms and they just try to put everybody in this little box of, okay, here's another one, here's another one, here's another one, instead of treating everyone, like you said, like a human, caring for them and their specific needs. And that is one of the reasons why I even wanted to start this podcast, is just to empower women through it all, no matter how you choose to birth, where, whatever. But like you should know these things so that when something does happen, you already kind of have an idea to where then it's easier to advocate for yourself. Because when you're in the moment, you don't know. And especially like you're probably worried about your baby and all of that stuff. So you're not thinking about all of those other things like birthing the placenta, because I mean, obviously you had other things on your mind, but that's when I just feel like they pounce and like take advantage of moms going through that. And it's just so frustrating, especially when something so beautiful turns into traumatic and just all of these other cascade of interventions that are really unnecessary, that are just rushed.
Yeah.
But I know that, you talked about it a little bit of just like the traumatic experience of that doctor forcibly pulling out your placenta in pieces. But how did that affect you physically, mentally, or emotionally?
Well, physically, like I said, I bled for 12 weeks. And that was, I think that was pretty much it. I feel like my recovery was okay. I did all my recovering in the NICU because thankfully, like, she was my first, so I did not leave her. I stayed in the NICU the whole 18 days that she was there. So I was in survival mode, I
Yeah.
guess is the best thing. The best way I can put it is I really wasn't thinking about my healing or like what my body was going through because
Mhm.
I couldn't. I had to disassociate from that, which is something that I do naturally with things. So I really didn't think much about like the healing process. And it was also my first, and I can say from experience, the healing from your first is very different than like babies after your first. So I feel like I had an easier time healing from that despite bleeding for 12 weeks because I really believe that it was because of how she took my placenta out.
Yeah, and that's super traumatic. So I'm sorry that you had to go through that.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate that. And that's something because you had said something about like knowing, like you starting this podcast so other women can know their rights basically and glean from other people's experiences. And that's something that I want to say, like, the you can always say no. And I feel like that's so cliche in like the birth world, like you can say no to
Yeah.
anything, but you really can. And also, just if you're a first time mom, know that you can wait usually up to 30 minutes before that placenta has to come out. And within that time, it usually comes out on its own. So I did not know that.
Yeah.
I did not learn about that. I really didn't, like I said, I didn't research much at all. Also, because I am a very go with the flow person, I didn't feel the need to.
Yeah.
Which, like, obviously I have since like done a lot more research in like birth and how it affects your body and everything. But as far as like mentally and emotionally, I think it has hit me harder like through the years, like as I've learned more. Because when it happened, you just don't know what you don't know. And it felt like I guess that's how that happens. And the more that I've learned, the more it has bothered me just because the principle of it, I think, and the injustice of it. So I think that's probably what has hit me the hardest.
Yeah. No, that's really good. Thank you for sharing that too. I think that that is super empowering, especially for first time moms too. Just hearing that and just kind of obviously learning through your experience. I know that there's quite a few moms that unfortunately have to experience the NICU. So can you kind of just like walk us through all the things that you were feeling, experiencing with maybe your first baby having to be in the NICU?
Yeah. Um Man, if I knew what I know now, I feel like our NICU experience would be very different. So when I had her, and they take, like, they do that with every NICU baby. They take them directly to the NICU, and we got in our room, like, so they leave you in the room you deliver in for about an hour, and then they take you to the postpartum wing. And I had not heard anything, and I was starting to get worried and a little stressed out. And I was asking the nurses that were coming into the room, and they were like, well, you can call down there. And I was like, okay. So I ended up calling down there, and the nurse that picked up, they kind of just brushed me off. They were like, she's fine. You rest and we'll get back to you, basically. I can't remember exactly what she said, but I was like, okay, this is weird. And like I said, if I had known more at that point, we would have been going down there, or at least my husband would have been walking down there, which he had tried to go down there, but you have to get like a pass. I don't know if all NICUs are like that, but you have to get like registered and a pass, something like that. I might not be saying it right, but
Yeah.
unless you go in with the mother, like I didn't have to register. So they didn't let him go in. I don't know why they didn't let him register or whatever he had to do, but they didn't let him come in. And then a little while later, I called again And the nurse, whoever answered again, was the same lady. And she was like, "You don't need to worry about this. She is okay. You just rest and take care of yourself." And looking back, that is just really crazy to me that, like, I'm asking to come see my baby that I just gave birth to and haven't seen. And you're telling me to chill out and let y'all handle it. Absolutely not. Like,
Yeah.
me at this point in my life, that would not fly.
Yeah.
And I was just so young and like didn't know anything. So I was like, get off the phone and I'm crying. I'm like, they basically won't let me come see her, which, you know, free will, like use your free will and figure out a way to get down there. So my nurse, one of my nurses came in and my husband and I were like, we want to go down there. Please take us down there because they are not telling us how we can see her. So she was like, okay, they get a wheelchair for me to roll down there because it's on a different floor obviously and a lot of walking. So we get there, finally get to meet her like officially rather than the 2 seconds that I got to hold her before they took her. And there really wasn't a reason why they were like not letting me down there. Like she was so good. She had oxygen for the first 12 hours and then they took that off. Like she didn't need it. And then she did have a feeding tube. And I don't really know like a first mom experience, like meeting your baby. It felt very strange. Like looking back, I don't really know how I would describe it just because I was really happy and I instantly felt like a mom. I've never been a maternal person. I've never been really great with kids despite my efforts growing up. When I held her in the NICU, it was just like an instant, like maternal instinct.
Yeah.
So I really do believe in that. Like if you feel like you are inadequate or not like prepared to be a mom, it will hit you. Like it will come. But as far as the NICU stay, like I said, I stayed with her. I think I went home and like slept at home once in the 18 days that she was in the NICU. Which that's what I wanted to do. Like I didn't want to leave her.
Yeah.
I felt like I had already been away from her too much. And I didn't want to leave her alone with anybody else. So,
Yeah.
and they have like a shower and stuff in the NICU. So that's where I lived for 18 days. And it was also very strange because they were very, I would say, I don't use this word lightly, but they seemed very possessive of her and me not like holding her too much or like making sure it was okay to hold her. And I wasn't allowed to try to breastfeed her, which I've heard mixed things about that as far as like NICU babies. Like I've heard people say at 34 weeks, you can absolutely try. They might not like get it or pick it up, but you can try. And then I've heard people say, yeah, it's very standard that they don't let you nurse in the NICU. But then like a new rotation of nurses came. And I remember one nurse, she was very encouraging and very like, of course you can pick up your baby. Like that's fine. You can pick her up whenever. So
Wow.
I don't know. I guess it was just different nurses and their opinions. And then being there for so many days, like people coming in and out, different people having a little bit different sets of rules. It was just a lot, honestly. And looking back, I'm like, I really was in fight or flight and just survival mode at that point.
Yeah.
But we did make it and it felt so good to bring her home.
I bet.
Like if you've ever had a baby in the NICU, no matter how long they're in there, like you could be in there for 3 days, you could be in there for a month. Like it feels so good to bring them home.
Yeah. How did this whole experience, starting from, early, going into labor early, and then all the way up until the NICU stay, how did this whole experience just shape the way that you viewed birth going into your second? And did it make you want to prep any differently for your second?
Absolutely. I think I had mentioned that going through this labor and delivery experience really gave me the realization that I'm very capable of of doing this, it gives you an idea of how birth goes and a little bit of how it feels. Although every birth is, in most cases, different, it really gives you a better idea of what to plan for. Because when you're going into it blind, you don't really know how to prep. And I feel like going from my first to my second, I had such a clearer idea of how I wanted to do things and how it would kind of go.
Yeah. I definitely agree with that as well. So now I just want to jump right into your second birth story.
Yeah, for sure. Because my first labor was so quick, we did, and by we, I mean like my whole family and even my OB, joked about having my baby in the car. Like it going so fast, having the baby in the car, although no one really believed it. Like I did not believe that I would give birth in the car. It was just funny.
Yeah.
Because my first was so fast. And then also I wanted a home birth with my second. My husband at the time was not for home birth. He had not looked into things himself yet.
Yeah.
So, but ultimately we did decide to have a hospital birth, mainly because we did not know why my daughter came early.
Yeah.
There was like no explanation. So I was kind of nervous that I would have another preterm labor if that's like if that was my pattern.
Yeah.
For whatever reason. So go through pregnancy, make it to 38 weeks. Great. Like we're to term. So at 38 weeks exactly, 10:30 p.m. My husband worked nights at this time. So he was at work. I was in bed with my daughter and I felt what I thought was a contraction. And the thing about going from having a spontaneous water break to starting out in early labor is very different, and you really question yourself and what you're feeling. So I had a few in bed, and it felt like a contraction. It felt like something that was not super familiar to me. And then they started, like, not long after that, they started to come, like, probably every 4 to 5 minutes. And I was texting my mom and my sister saying, like, I don't know if this is happening. I was texting my husband, like, hey, you might need to come home from work. I'm not 100% sure. Like, just wait on me. And also at the time, if you're a first time mom and you don't know this, I'm about to tell you something. It's called clearing out. And a lot of women do this right before they go into labor or during labor. And it's essentially, not to be graphic, but you start pooping a lot. And that's what I was doing. Like, I think I was on the toilet for like 30 minutes.
Yeah.
And that's all I was doing.
But that is why sitting on the toilet and laboring on the toilet is one of my absolute favorite positions to do that, because all of the blood, the liquids, the poop, everything is just like, you just feel like you can just like relax your body because you're on the toilet and you're not worried about like messes or anything like that. Like I think that that's why the toilet is such a valuable place to labor.
I have to agree with that. 100%. So after I told my sister that, she was like, okay, yeah, this is probably it. So maybe go ahead and tell Ethan, that's my husband, to come home. So I tell him to come home. My mom was going to come get my daughter. And at this time, like, COVID regulations were still going on. 2022, it was the beginning of 2022, in January. And unfortunately, my sister was not going to be able to be in the room with me, which was very sad.
Yeah.
Because you could only have one support person with you. And for whatever reason, she rode with my mom to get my daughter. Like, she still doesn't really even know why she got in the car and came. They live right next door, by the way. But she just came. And she did have like the thought of riding with us to support me if I needed support on the way there. If she couldn't be in the hospital room, she wanted to do something. So they were on their way. My husband was on his way. Thankfully, we only lived like 12 minutes from his work. So in this time, I had like made my way to the couch, which is like my second place that I labor, is like right leaned over the couch. And this is when active labor was starting. I was breathing through the contractions. I was doing really well at first. And then I don't know if I had started to get scared because the contractions started to get really intense. But something about me is I check out a little bit during labor. I find it hard to focus myself. I'm one of those people who really like to be coached. So if someone's standing there next to me and like breaking into like my space and saying like in a positive way and like telling me, hey, you need to focus, you need to breathe, all the things, like I do well with that because I really, the best way I can describe it is that I check out. And so I started losing control a little bit in the contractions. I had 2 contractions that I just lost it and had no control. And if you've ever had an unmedicated birth, you probably know exactly what I'm talking about when you lose control. And I just, I started praying, like I just out loud, the only thing that I could really get out was like, Lord, help me get through this. Like, please help me get through this. And I like that snapped me back into like focus. I'm like, and I'm talking out loud to myself, by the way, like just to paint the picture, because I guess I have to vocalize this. It can't all be in my head because, like, I don't know. I guess I'm listening to myself. But I really think it was the Holy Spirit because, like I said, I'm not really good at focusing and centering myself when I'm in labor. But I was basically out loud saying, Shelby, you've got to get it together. Like, you've got to focus. You've got to breathe. So the next few contractions were much better, were a lot more controlled. And then my husband came in and he was like, what do I need to do? And I'm still leaned over the couch. And I said, just grab the bags and whatever you need, and then we'll go. And I got up and he's like doing all the stuff, getting the car loaded. And I get up and I go get pants and I have a contraction while I'm like putting the pants on. And it was very, very intense and my water just burst. And I'm standing up and out loud, I talk a lot to myself apparently. I'm like, this is not good. This is not good because that was very familiar to me because in my first birth, my water burst like that right before I started pushing. So I was like, this is not good. And my husband came in. He's like, okay, are you going to get your pants on so we can go? And I'm like, we're not going to make it. And he's like, yes, we are. Like, you're going to be okay. We're going to make it. It's going to be fine. And I'm like, we're not. And he's like, we're leaving. Because, like, he doesn't know.
Yeah.
And he really didn't know that I knew. He was just convinced we were going to make it.
Yeah.
And his job, like to him, was get her to the hospital.
Yeah.
That's what he was thinking. I was like, okay, grab towels because we're not going to make it. So he grabbed like a blanket off the couch and we went out to the car. As I was getting in the car, my sister saw me have a contraction. They had pulled up right then. And my sister saw me have a contraction. And she was like, do you want me to go with you? And I would usually be like a people pleaser and be like, no, you don't have to. Without hesitation, I said, yes, like, I want you to come.
Yep.
So we get in the back seat and obviously my mom has my daughter, like that's all taken care of. So we start driving 10 minutes down the road. And let me say this, like, I had another contraction in the car and my sister didn't say anything out loud, obviously, because I'm like in the midst of transition, but she knew that we were also not going to make it.
Yeah.
She was like, we're about to have a baby in the car. So 10 minutes down the road, I started feeling the ring of fire. Like baby was crowning. And all I could get out at that time was ring of fire. And my sister was like, pull over, like to my husband. And Ethan was like, what do we do? Do we call 911? And my sister was like, I think we have to. Just like, I don't know. I still honestly don't know the laws about like driving with a baby like to the hospital if you give birth in the car. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So, anyways, he was on the phone with 911. I was like, I think I feel a head, but can you look down there and see if his head is there?
Yeah.
And she looked and she was like, there is a whole baby's head there. I was like, okay, great. So I think I had a few more contractions, and she's amazing. She's like coaching me through them, giving me counter pressure.
Wow.
Counter pressure is my best friend. Usually my husband is the one that does the counter pressure in like the majority of my labor, but he was preoccupied on the phone. So anyways, I had probably like 2 or 3 contractions and he came out. So I was like touching his head, but she caught him. Like she had to catch him.
Yeah.
I'm never in the mental space to catch my own babies, unfortunately. It just happened so fast, and I'm like in transition and pushing at the same time. But it was so sweet. So she caught him. He cried instantly as soon as he came out. And she laid him on my chest, and we just sat there. We were both like, this just happened. Like, that was crazy.
Wow.
That was crazy. And she was not a doula at that time either, but she's very good. Like she's always been very knowledgeable about birth. Like ever since she got into it, she like that's where I get all of my information from.
That's awesome.
If I have a question, I ask her.
Yeah.
So she's very knowledgeable. I felt very, very safe and very positive in that space. And I like even at home, like I always say this, like my 2 safest people, and like it doesn't matter who else is around. Like if my husband is there and my sister is there, I'm 100% okay. Like no one else has to be there, honestly.
Yeah.
Obviously, no one else has to be there.
Yeah.
So my husband was still on the phone with 911 when he was born, and he walks over to the window and he was like, well, he's here. And the lady on the phone was like, what do you mean? And he was like, the baby is born. And she was like, well, she's already had the baby. And he was like, yeah, she just had him. So
That's funny.
the ambulance got there. They got us, blankets and everything, got transferred over to the ambulance. And that was pretty much the extent of the labor and delivery.
Wow. That is absolutely insane. You always like hear about these stories every now and then, and everyone's always like, that's their worst fear is to give birth in a car, not make it. But did you ever think that you would give birth in a car?
I really didn't think I would give birth in a car. Like, as much as we joked about it, and we really only joked about it because I was the first one in our family to have a quick labor. And it was just like, it was just a joke. Like I truly did not believe that I would give birth in a car. And I really didn't think much about like preparing to give birth in a car either. So, but also like in the moment and even hindsight, like I was not scared. Like I did not feel like it was a traumatic situation at all. Like it was actually my most peaceful labor and delivery. Although the like leading up to it was a little bit chaotic because, the rush of trying to get everything together, trying to get in the car down the road, like that's a little bit chaotic.
Yeah.
But actually being like in the car it was just my sister because my husband had stepped out because he was going to be on the phone. It was very redemptive of my first labor and delivery. And I also did not let anybody touch my placenta. I was like, we're not doing that.
Yeah.
And I actually delivered my placenta in the ambulance on the way to the hospital. So I'm really glad that I got that out before we got there, because our hospital is 45 minutes to an hour away from us.
Oh, wow.
And we had only made it 10 minutes down the road. So we were in the ambulance for like 40 minutes.
Yeah.
So I had plenty of time to deliver it on my own.
That is a wild story. A joke turned into reality. Like that is so crazy. So many people would say that obviously this car birth is traumatic, but you say that it was just so empowering and one of your more calmer or most chill births. So can you explain what was so empowering about it?
You know, empowering in the sense that how redemptive it was, and the fact that like every time I've given birth, it's like I do feel empowered in the way that like I just did that. And I feel like a lot of women feel that way. Every time I've given birth has felt empowering in the way that like I am capable of doing that, and it leaves me like shocked every single time. I'm like, wow, I just did that. And I feel like a lot of women feel that way after they give birth. Which like you should. It's crazy. Like it is crazy that we do that. And we get to talk about it afterwards. Specifically for this birth, I would say I was more in awe of the whole thing. Just the fact that, like, the way it started when I was at home laboring by myself, because I don't think I touched on that too much during my birth story, but I did most of my laboring by myself, and I went through all of active labor by myself. So, like, being there, like I said, coaching and talking to myself and like centering myself with no one else there, and truly feeling like the Lord is what gave me the strength to do that. I just in awe of that, especially knowing the way that I am during birth, because my labor and deliveries are all very similar.
Mm-hmm.
I act very similar in all of them as well. And I usually, like I mentioned, I'm not great at like bringing myself back.
Yeah.
I'm usually checked out unless someone comes into my space and says, hey, like you need to breathe, you need to focus. So that, and then the uncomplicated delivery. It was perfect. Like the delivery was perfect. He came out great in the best position. He cried right away. There was nothing that was scary about it. And I did not have a medicalized birth at all. Like literally in the backseat of my car.
Yeah.
And it was truly what I think that I needed. And the Lord knew that I needed that after my first experience with not just like the hospital birth, but like afterwards, like the NICU stay, and them like, taking her. I mean, at this point, there was no one who like grabbed my baby from me at all. Because by the time I made it to the hospital, it had been 40 minutes and he was like perfect. He was like nursing when we were rolled in,
Wow.
and it was so nice. So no one like took
I
him,
love that.
and it was great.
Yeah, and I think too that that just kind of goes to show, and not that all like if everybody gives birth in a car that they're gonna have the perfect outcome. That's not what I'm about to say, but it just kind of goes to show a little bit too, and like a glimpse of what women's bodies are truly capable, especially when you don't have a lot of the medical overreach is kind of what I like to say, because sometimes interventions are done or used way too much at times when it's not a necessity. It's just more of like protocol, or it's just like what they're used to doing. So they do it. So, same with like cervical checks. You don't have to ever say, yeah, you can check me. You can literally say, yeah, no thanks. I don't want to. Like, it's
Mm-hmm.
just like little things like that. Like the least amount of hands in places that they don't need to be stuck there, or just like little things like that, and just like feeling safe, like you said, like being with your husband and your sister. Those are the people that make you feel safe. So that probably helped the outcome too, because you felt safe. You didn't feel scared. And yeah, I just think that that's a huge testament to that, when you kind of let your body just do its thing, that it doesn't have to be scary, and you don't have to freak out, because everything doesn't have to be medicalized when it comes to birth.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, and what did this birth specifically teach you, or, change the way that you approached your third?
Mm. That you don't have to have a medicalized birth. It honestly, I feel like it affected my husband's mindset a lot more than it did mine in that regards. I think like with this, with my second, I had already gone through an unmedicated birth with my daughter. So that part of it, I was like, okay, it wasn't a fluke that I did it the first time. I can do it again.
Yeah.
And there's no reason that I want the epidural ever or like any medication because I'd opt out of like anything that they offer. And with my husband, I think it kind of made him see like, obviously you literally just did that by yourself. But also like there was a lot more that went into his like pull to home birth. And he's the type of person that has to like do the research himself because I could talk to him all day about it. And whereas like I can give him good points, like he had to research that for himself. And I feel like a lot of husbands, I see that so much like in my personal life, but also online. You see that so much that husbands will do the research and then their mind is changed just like your mind was changed. Yeah. So that's like what happened with him.
Yeah.
As far as like preparing differently, I really didn't, other than I prepared for a home birth rather than a hospital birth, just because I'm all like I said, I'm very laid back.
Yeah.
And if I overthink things, that's not a good thing for me. So
Yeah.
I think more of my focus was on taking care of myself, like during labor and postpartum. That was like my main focus after my second, or like going into my third.
Yeah.
I had a really great postpartum experience with my second as well, which made me like really passionate about postpartum experiences because women really are not taken care of enough postpartum.
Agree.
And uh, it's really hard when you don't have a village to help you.
Yep.
Which is why I encourage anyone to talk to the people around you about the importance of postpartum.
So I'm just going to go ahead and let you just kind of talk about your third birth story here, just because you had mentioned that it was uneventful compared to your other two, but it was very chill and laid back. So go ahead and start with your third birth story.
Yes, very uneventful in the best way. Like you don't want a super eventful home birth, I would say. So labor started almost exactly the same way. I always start like in the early mornings. I think with him it was 1:30, like right on the dot, that I felt my first contraction. The first one, didn't think much about it. The second one, I was like, oh, that kind of feels like familiar. And then the third one coming pretty soon after that, I was like, okay, I need to get up and like really see if something's going on. So I get up, I walk around, I texted my mom and my sister. My husband is at home at this point. He does not work second shift now. So I just let him sleep for a little bit longer, obviously. And I get in the bathtub and it kind of eases up, but I think it was just like the bath feeling good.
Yeah.
I don't really think that anything stopped. So I got out, kept having contractions. I laid down on the couch, and I do not lay down when I'm in labor at all. It is the most uncomfortable thing to me. So I laid down and I started having a contraction and I was like, nope. So I was texting my midwife and I told her what I was feeling. A little bit of background about this birth. This is something that happened differently than my other births. So I was at work that day. It was a Monday when this happened. I was at work and my body started to clear out. It seemed like it was clearing out. And I was like, in my mind, I'm like, this is the start of something. So I got to a point where I felt like I could like leave because I just lived right down the road from my house. So I closed down everything at work and I went home for the day. That was about 2 p.m. And that stopped. Nothing else happened. And I was like, oh, okay. I did text my midwife and say, just a heads up, this happened. And this usually means I'm really close to labor or that I'm in labor. And we had talked about that like before, so she knew. So then skip to 1:30 a.m. on Tuesday morning. And that's when it started. So I was texting my midwife. I had the contraction timer going. They were 2 to 3 minutes apart. And I told my sister and my mom, and they were like, okay, we're just going to go ahead and come over. Because 2 to 3 minutes apart that's pretty close, especially when you usually go quickly. And I was still a little bit in denial just because I didn't want everybody to show up and like be waiting on me. So my midwife called me and I had a contraction like on the phone with her. And I was just like, I wasn't quite in active labor yet. I was right before active labor.
Gotcha.
I would say, because they were still super manageable. Like I just breathed a little bit through them.
Yeah.
And it was fine. So she had told me, she was like, well, I'm going to go ahead and get ready and kind of head that way. I was like, okay. So I went back and forth from the toilet to the birth ball to beside the couch where I usually gravitate towards, which I had a feeling that that's where I would deliver for whatever reason. I don't know. Like, I just, in my mind, I was like, that's where I was most comfortable laboring with my second. I feel like it's going to happen there. So I was in active labor right before transition and they were starting to feel intense. My husband was giving me counter pressure. And then my sister was kind of taking turns with him, like if he went up and like went and did something, because they were like also like setting up another room for me to give birth in, which the birth pool was like kind of out of the question at that point because it was with my midwife and I was getting very close. So I don't even think they started setting up the birth pool. So I was having a contraction and then my water broke. And to me, like when my water breaks, it's like, well, I'm very close. Like I'm about to go through transition and start pushing. So like my water broke and I think my sister was the one sitting there and I was like, okay, like it's happening. Like my water just broke. And then I started going into transition and that always happens the same. I'm like, it's very intense, which isn't it for everyone? It's just a really intense time during labor. And my midwife was not there. And the midwife assistant actually walked in. And I was like really deep into it. I was also really wanting to get into the water. I'm like, I want to get into some water. I will get into the bathtub. I don't care. They're like, you really can't at this point. Like I was about to start crowning and well, they did try to let me move, but my contractions were so close together. It's like, I wouldn't have been able to get there.
Yeah.
And I would have had the baby on the way to the bathroom, at the point that I was at, because I had come out of a contraction. I was like, I really want to get in the bathtub. And they were like, okay. And they tried to like help me up. And I was like, no, I can't move. So I just stayed there. And like right after the midwife assistant came in, she called the midwife and was like, there's a head, like just letting her know. Because I think that's typical for like whoever is there to call the midwife and let her know what's going on. Although the midwife assistant like had it, she's actually my midwife this time.
Wow.
Because she is a midwife now, and she lives like 15 minutes from me, so that's really nice.
Wow.
She ended up catching the baby. Like I said, I'm never in the state of mind to catch my own babies, which is fine. There's a lot going on. So she caught him. He pretty much instantly started crying. It was really sweet, and that was pretty much it. Like I said, pretty uneventful. I will say, I think I over prepared for this birth because I started like feeling like it was going to take a long time, which is silly because it was not rushed. Was so used to like early labor into active labor being rushed, like to get somewhere to do something. So to have nothing to do and nowhere to go, just chilling, like having contractions in the comfort of my own home, like, and that being the only thing that I'm doing, it felt very drawn out to me,
Yeah.
which is funny. I'm not trying to say that too lighthearted because I know that like the people talking about fast labors can also trigger people. And I really, really want to be sensitive to that. That's held me back from telling people my birth stories in the past just because I feel very privileged to have the birth experiences that I've had. I love my labor and deliveries, although like precipitous births are very intense and they're known to be intense.
Mm-hmm.
I would take that any day because that's just what I'm used to. Like
Yeah.
that's all I know.
Yep.
And that's the kind of labor and delivery I want to have. So like I don't mean to be so lighthearted about having fast labors because I know so many women have longer labors and I have watched long labors and they are very I feel like tiring is not even the right word.
Yeah, the only thing I will chime in and say too is obviously everybody births differently. And for me, I have experienced kind of both, I guess, because my first, I mean, it wasn't as long as what some people have, but it was like 16 hours for my first, which isn't too bad, especially when like the active labor part was only right when we got to the hospital. So it was like from 7 p.m. until 10 p.m. And I had her at like 10:18. So like that was really the only time I spent in the hospital. Now, my second was a home birth and it was literally an hour and 18 minutes from my first contraction to the time that I had him. And the one thing that I will say that yes. Obviously, people who have very long labors, those freaking suck sometimes. But people who have fast labors, like it's not all just like a walk in a park, like woohoo. I kid you not, I basically had one long contraction from the very first contraction till the time that I pushed him out, and my body uncontrollably pushed him out. Like I was trying to slow myself down so that my midwife could get there because she wasn't here yet. She was like an hour away, and I had him into my husband's arms because it was so fast. And so I just want to speak to you too. Don't discredit yourself or ever think that your story is either less than or that you're being insensitive to other people because you're not. And people need to know this because there are women out there, especially like me too, that maybe this isn't their pattern, but then they end up having one and it is in like, and you've done this for all of your births. Like that is insane, the amount of intensity that you're enduring for literally the whole time. So don't discredit yourself, and I don't think you're being insensitive at all because birth's different for everybody. And you know, I've loved hearing all of your stories so far, and just seeing your pattern of that is it's so miraculous.
Well, I really appreciate that. Thank you for saying that. To touch on that is like as soon as you start labor, it's like hit the ground running and you don't stop.
Yeah.
There's no pause to be serene. So if you know what I'm talking about, like you see those birth videos that like are very like calm and like pushing the baby out. My sister had a labor like that. Like you didn't even know she was pushing the baby out.
Oh wow.
Like she was so calm. So yeah, not like that at all.
Yeah.
But no, I do appreciate you saying that.
What do you feel is the biggest misconception of having fast labors?
That it's easier.
Mm.
And I cannot speak on longer labors because I've never had one. But after my second, I it was the first time I heard the term precipitous labors and that they are historically so like more intense, like a longer period of time, or like the majority of your labor because your labor is so short. It's like you jump right into the intensity because your body is working so quickly and progressing so quickly that it's all happening kind of at once. I'm not saying that I would want, like I said, I love laboring the way that I know
Yeah.
how, and I don't really want anything different. So I can't say if I would be more comfortable having a little bit longer labor. But I do feel like the misconception is you getting off easy if you have a short labor.
Yeah, no, I definitely agree that that's probably one of the biggest misconceptions, because I personally do not feel like that is true at all, just from my own personal experience, because the intensity of it is just like you don't get a break. And it's just basically nonstop, start to finish. So, yeah, thank you for speaking to that. What advice would you give other moms who might have fast labors or suspect that they will have a fast labor?
You can't plan for something that you have no idea about. It's really hard to predict what kind of labor experience you're going to have. If you're a first time mom, I would really encourage you to prepare for everything. Like, mentally prepare yourself to hold your plan loosely, because just like in my case, I didn't expect it all. I was caught off guard and shocked that I went into labor at 34 weeks. And then I was also shocked that it was 4.5 hours. So I would say prepare for like any event that could happen, and listen to birth stories and other people's perspective of their different labors.
You had talked a lot about, your birth team and your husband and your sister, and just mentioned how being very intentional about your team is, especially after your first birthing experience. So, what does that kind of look like for you now? And what should moms really look for when building a birth team that they really trust?
So my non-negotiables are my husband and my sister. My mom, who was there for my last home birth, she'll be there for this home birth. Those are just my like very easy, like I wouldn't do it without them.
Yeah.
And I feel like everyone has those people. So it's not like a preparing kind of thing. Like, you don't have to think about that too hard. As far as who else you invite into your birth space, starting with the provider that you want. If you want a hospital birth, I do think that if you're wanting a certain birth, you need to look at policies on all sides and be really aware of how they look at birth versus how you look at birth, and make your decision according to that. If you do want, like, in a hospital setting with an OB, I would say try to find the one that most aligns with you, and that's usually not going to be meeting with one OB and making the decision based on that one. Like, it usually takes basically interviewing practitioners. For reference, like in my area, there's two main OBs that people suggest, like in mom Facebook groups, when moms are asking, like, who would you recommend for respecting my birth plan? There's two of them that most people would say. Now, for midwives, I would recommend to interview midwives, unless you meet one and you just like instantly click with them and they check all of your boxes. But not every midwife is for every person. Brooke, I like that you mentioned that your midwife, like how attentive she was, but also that she's obviously a Christian and she prayed over you. Like, that is personalized care. Like, that is something that you want to look for if that's important to you.
Yeah.
In a midwife. And you can, like, when you're going into like a hospital setting, well, for one, your OB might not be there. Now, granted, your midwife might not be there as well, but it's less likely that they would not be able to make it unless you just go so fast that they don't make it.
Yeah.
I speak from experience.
Yeah.
But I mean, she did get there. She was at the front door when he was delivered. But anyways, so I would suggest like interviewing midwives, like know kind of what you want, have an idea of what you want in a midwife, and then like base your questions around that.
So I like to end my show with one question that I ask every single mom, and that is, if you could speak one piece of empowering wisdom into the hearts of the mothers listening, what would that be?
I've heard so many people like on your podcast give so many good things, and I don't want to like reiterate any of them. So I feel like there's so many things that I could say, but I do want to say this because I feel like this is something that has helped me have empowering births is like when you are choosing your birth team, like when you have your people and not specifically like your provider, like your midwife or your OB, but I'm talking about the people closest to you who's going to be in this space. I would say prepare them as much as possible. Tell them exactly what you want out of your birth, but also tell them what you want out of them in your birth. Just like, so for example, my husband knows that like I want him to give me counter pressure. I want his encouragement. I was very blessed that he just kind of naturally did these things in my first labor and delivery. I did not prep this man at all, and he was a rock star. I don't know what overcame him, but something did. And he's like such a great birthing partner. But so that's what that's what he expects to do when I'm in labor. And then my sister, she knows that I want her to come into my space and like recenter me. Like she's the one who speaks in to my space when I have checked out and tells me like when to breathe, when to slow down. And that really helps me have a more empowering birth or labor because like I mentioned, I check out and I could lose control, and they help me stay in control. And I feel like that helps me have a positive labor experience because I'm not just like rolling around screaming, you know? So if I could give anyone a piece of different advice, it would be really prepare your birth team. And for a first time mom, it's really hard to know what you want out of people. It's hard to know what to ask for. So I would say if you're under midwifery care, while you are going to your appointments, talk to them about it, get their advice. Like, what, in your experience, like, what would you suggest I ask my people for? Or, like, as they get to know you, I think they'll get to kind of know your personality. And they're really good about knowing, like, what person needs that, like, physical support and verbal support and who needs like space and silence. So I think they could give you a really good direction on how to tell your birth team what you need out of them. And I'll say one last thing. It kind of goes along with that, but as far as mindset goes with your birth, like hold it loosely, like have your birth plan. But if all of my labor and delivery experiences have taught me anything, it's that you can have a positive labor and birth experience and things not go exactly how you planned. But I feel like you have to have an open hand and an open mind to accept the changes that you aren't expecting.
Yeah. No, that is really, really good. So thank you so much, Shelby, for coming on Her Birth, Her Story.
Well, thank you for having me.
I still cannot believe that she actually had a baby in the car, because I can imagine that it can happen just because laboring in the car is no fun. I'd probably rather have my kid in the car than laboring in the car because, like I've said before, those potholes, yeah, they're crazy. But wow. And I just love too how her births just progress. You can tell that she grows in wisdom, grows in confidence as she births hers. And I can't wait to hear what her fourth birth story is going to be here come in July. But I just love how she speaks with passion and compassion in this space and really is just a big advocate for your birth space and your people that you bring on. Your support system is crucial. So thank you so much, Shelby, for sharing. And if this story inspired you, surprised you, or even helped you feel empowered, please share it with another mama who needs to hear it. And if you haven't already, please like, review, rate, or subscribe to our show. This helps us be able to reach more moms and empower more moms. And as always, remember that this is your body, your baby, and your birth. We are reclaiming birth one story at a time.